What's up there, sports fans? This is Ryan. This is Wisconsin Sports. We're going to talk over why, or at least we're going to go through the MVP race regarding our favorite player, Yanis Antetokounmpo, and the other guys that are out there. It's of my personal belief, Yanis is the MVP. I actually really fail to see the other sides of the argument. It doesn't really make sense to me a whole bunch. So let's get into the reasoning why. You can support me. You can disagree with it. That's all right. That's what opinions are for. We can all think about these things a little bit differently, but let's go through this bad boy and tell you why he is the MVP of the league. So we're up here on episode 4, guys. If you are new to the station, again, this is Wisconsin Sports Talk. We're here to talk about everything Bucks, Brewers, Packers, everything that we can. If you want more videos, it's really easy, guys. Press that red button that says subscribe. Thumbs up is always sincerely appreciated. So anybody willing to do that means a lot to me. Thank you very much. A little bit about who I am. Most of you guys probably know this by now. Green Bay, born and raised, so don't live too far from Lambeau Field. What I do for work, I'm a professional DFS analyst. That's Daily Fantasy Sports, DraftKings, FanDuel. DFS 5-pack. I got another YouTube channel that's been up for a long time where we just talk fantasy sports. If you're interested, hop on over. Love to have you guys come watch. So, why is Giannis the MVP? I mean, there's a lot of reasons that, to me, he is kind of the clear-cut favorite. I know the national media will kind of take a look at some other guys, and there's a few other names that are at least worthy of consideration. But let's get into the crux of it and why he is the MVP. Again, most valuable player, not who's having the best year based on what your expectations were. There's other guys that are probably playing better than you expected. That doesn't mean you're the MVP of the league. So who are the candidates? Right now, it's the Greek Freak, our boy Yanis Antetokounmpo, number 34, the king of the Milwaukee Bucks right now. You got Paul George of the Oklahoma City Thunder, having a great year. We'll get into some more details than he is. He's having a great season. I don't want to take anything away from what Paul George is doing. He's playing awesome basketball this year. I mean, best year of his career, no questions about it. Outplaying what everybody expected. He's been fantastic. Right next to him, we got the reigning MVP, James Harden, the beard. His little, I think it was like 17-game run while Chris Paul was out with injury was amazing. I mean, just flat out spectacular what he was capable of doing to put that team on his back and what he was doing from the offensive end. And then number 4, Nikola Jokic, the Joker, the center from the Denver Nuggets, having himself a great season, one of the young and up-and-coming superstars of the league. Those are the 4 guys really in consideration right now. And obviously, if we're going to try to whittle this down to one and why he should be MVP, let's start doing the whole process of elimination thing. And who should really eliminate first? It's going to be Nikola Jokic. I am a huge Jokic fan. I love what he does. Being a guy that evaluates daily fantasy sports, I love all the things that he can do. He is already, and he is super young still, one of, if not the greatest passing big man that we have ever seen. From the center position, you can run him as a point center. That is unusual. He has such a good feel for the game. He has such soft hands. He is such a good passer. That's why he was in the skills competition over All-Star Weekend. He is very skilled as far as big men go. That being said, he's 4th, and I only put him up here because I wanted to make sure his name got out there. I think he at least deserves to be mentioned. That being said, I get it why he's 4th. Talk about Giannis and Paul George are clear-cut 2 of the best defenders in the entire game. And James Harden, well, he doesn't guard in space very well, is a pretty good low-post defender. So as bad as his reputation is for defense, there are some things he actually does really well. He's really good on deflections. He's really good at guarding in the low post. In space, he's pretty pathetic. He's also not asked to do much defensively by his coach, who wants him to exert the majority of his what's the best word for it? Energy on the offensive side of things. So the points for Nikola Jokic, though, is Denver's got the 4th best record in the NBA, and Gary Harris, their quality wing defender, excellent defender on the wing, good three-point shooter, has missed a lot of games this year. Paul Millsap has missed a lot of games, and Will Barton has missed a lot of games. So 3 of their best players have missed a ton of time this year. And yet there they are with the 4th best record in the NBA. And the big part of, the big guy leading the show right here, I mean, Jamal Murray's pretty good. Monty Morris is having a nice year. It's Nikola Jokic. He is the glue. He is the leader of this team. He is the best player on this team. So I wanted to at least make sure we brought his name up. But he's 4th out of the 4 guys, so we will move on over. And so who are we going to kick out next? So for the sake of this video and for the sake of argument, I'm going to rule out James Harden next. Even though For me, he's second in MVP voting. So this is a little bit of a difficult situation to navigate through this video. So I think for me, I have him second, but the way things are shaping up right now, Paul George and Yanis seem to be getting the lion's share of the national media pub, the lion's share of the hype. So I really wanted to bring it down to those two. But for me, James Harden is number two. What he did while Chris Paul was out, I mean, it was amazing. And the other point to this is that's what an MVP is, the most valuable player. The Rockets' record is down this year, but Clint Capella, their stud center, has missed a extended amount of time. Chris Paul's missed about half the season, well, maybe a little bit under that, but close to half the season, which just means James Harden has put this team on the back in a very competitive West, and he's been amazing. So the other reason James Harden is playing from behind right now, simply due to the fact that he's got a reputation for bad defense, whereas Yanis and Paul George are clearly two of the best defenders in the entire game. Harden's got a bad reputation. Also, we know how the voters go, right? The reason LeBron doesn't win MVP every year, or Aaron Rodgers, when he was playing better, wasn't winning MVP every year, they don't like to give it to the same guy over and over again. And I get that. You wanted to spread it out a little bit. So Harden does have that working against him. Again, I have him too. It's really close. But for argument's sake, because Paul George is everybody's on his jock right now, the national media, NBA Twitter, everything like that, I don't really get it, but they seem to think Paul George is the MVP right now. So I wanted to get into the comparison one-on-one of the Greek Freak versus PG-13. Whoops, wrong slide. All right, so let's get over to this one. We got Yanis versus Paul George. So here it is. My biggest argument against Paul George is, how can you be the MVP of the NBA if it's not even clear that you're the best player on your team? Any arguments with that? Because Russell Westbrook is really good. He's a former MVP himself. He's the guy who has the ball in his hand the majority of the time. He's also the emotional leader of the Oklahoma City Thunder. So again, Paul George is having a great year. He has been phenomenal. He has exceeded everybody's expectations. But it goes back to me, what is MVP? What is the most valuable player? If you go back 2 seasons before George arrived to the Thunder, they weren't as good as they are now, but they weren't significantly worse without him. Russell Westbrook had to do a ton for this team. And credit to Russ for really letting Paul do his thing and kind of taking a little bit of a step back this year. But Westbrook is the emotional leader of this team, and that matters in real life. If you just want to talk about stats, they both got them. Russ and Paul George both have great stats, but it's difficult for me to call you the MVP if I can't clearly say you're the most valuable asset to your team. I hope that makes sense to everybody. It's one of the reasons that the Warriors will never have an MVP as currently constructed, because Steph Curry and Kevin Durant are both so freaking awesome that it's difficult to say it's one or the other. And then when you got Klay Thompson and Draymond and Cousins to boot, you just can't win an MVP that way. You got to be clearly the best player on your team for me to say that you're the most valuable player. And Paul George isn't. All right, so let's keep going with this argument. Let's talk about some individual kind of ways that you can dissect these two guys. So who's better, the Bucks or the Thunder? The Thunder did win the only matchup between these two teams, and they played great that day. Both Westbrook, Grant, Paul George, everybody was great that game. The better team was the Thunder for that game. It wasn't OKC. We'll see what happens when they come to Milwaukee, but the Thunder deserved to win that game. They played the better game that day. But overall, the Bucks are 6 games better than the Thunder. Advantage Giannis. 6 games is, a pretty decent chunk of change to be better. All right, so let's take a look at scoring the basketball. Where does the advantage go in this one? So Paul George currently averages 1.7 more points per game. Okay. On the surface, I could see why you might think Paul George. The flip side of this is Giannis plays 3 minutes less per game than Paul George, not because he can't handle the same load, because the Bucks have 30-plus double-digit wins this year, and quite frankly, he just doesn't need to do as much some games. They are kicking butts and taking names. They have a plus-minus rivaled by varied teams throughout history. They're winning a lot of games in huge margins, so he just doesn't have to play as many games, and that's a big part of why he's averaging 1.7 points per game less than Paul George. If they played the number of minutes, because the Bucks weren't always winning by a ton, he'd average more points per game more than likely. All right, next up, Giannis also shoots it at a 58% clip. Now, part of this is going to be because he takes the ball to the basket at will, whereas Paul George is launching threes left and right. But ultimately, He's doing this at a much, much more efficient rate than Paul George, almost 13 percentage points better. It's a lot. He's taking 4 less shots per game. He's distributing the ball better. So points per game, Paul George has it, but simply on efficiency, you have to at least call this one a wash. At the very minimum, you got to call this a wash because Giannis is doing it in fewer minutes on fewer shots. He's more efficient doing it. So if you want to just talk about bulk, fine. Great. If it's just points per game, okay, fine. But I want to talk about efficiency. Next up, rebounding. Yanis averages 12.7. Paul George averages 8. That's a huge, huge advantage for Yanis. So clearly he's a much better rebounder. Next up, assists. 6 to 4.2. Okay, that's a pretty big discrepancy there as well. So when it comes to court vision, playmaking, and assists, advantage Yanis. So far, pretty much everything is pushing in the Greek Freak's direction. Next up, steals. All right, Paul George is averaging 2.3 steals per game. Giannis is only 1.4. This is an advantage for Paul George. He is, by all accounts, if not the top theft guy in the entire NBA, top 5, arguably number 1. Can't take that away from him. Advantage Paul George. He is an excellent deflector of the basketball, really good at steals, very good overall defender. Can't knock that, can't take that away from him. He is very good at that portion of his game. In fact, not even very good, excellent at that part of his game. All right, next up, blocks. Giannis averages 1.4, Paul George 0.5. Big advantage, Giannis in that one. So I think if you take a look at the blocks and the steals, they kind of cancel each other out. So to me, that's about a wash right there. All right, now overall defense. We've already alluded to this fact, a couple times throughout the video. These are 2 of the best defenders in the entire NBA. They both have a great combination of size and skill. Giannis has put on all that weight. He's got all that speed and all that size. Paul George also has a great wingspan, big player, excellent on-ball defender, just a very, very good overall defender. So I think the NBA public as a whole would say this is like a landslide in favor of Paul George. It's not, though. And that's the difference between, the NBA public who just watches a little bit and dorks like myself who sit around and watch this from an analytical standpoint on a daily basis. These are 2 of the best defenders in the league. They're extremely versatile with what they're doing. You can't really knock either guy. Giannis has a better defensive rating this year, according to the advanced statistics. But all in all, for me, this one's close. If you want to go Paul George based on reputation, okay. I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you Giannis is a better defender than Paul George. For me, it's about a wash. I think there's arguments to be made in favor of both players. But if you want to go Paul George by a tidbit, okay, I'm all right with that. I'm not going to argue with you. All right, 3-point shooting. All right. Giannis has gotten a lot better as the season progressed, but this is another one. This isn't even close. There's a couple categories Giannis is way ahead. There's a couple categories, steals and 3-point shooting, where Paul George is big time ahead. Paul George is a very good 3-point shooter. Giannis isn't. So that's a big time advantage in favor of PG-13. Next up, we go back to the whole idea behind the emotional leader and the difference between purely looking at statistics and what you bring to a basketball game. Paul George is an excellent basketball player, and he's still the Robin to the Batman that is Russell Westbrook. Some people might view it differently. That's all right. That's an opinion. That's not a fact that I can say. Like, I can tell you that Giannis averages 0.9 more blocks per game. That's a fact. That's an opinion. It's open for interpretation. If you feel it's differently, I respect your opinion. I watch a lot of the Thunder. They're very relevant within the daily fantasy sports community because they do play at a frenetic pace and have 2 of the better players in the NBA. So I do watch a lot of the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's still Russell Westbrook's team by my eyes. So he's the emotional leader. Meanwhile, Giannis is the leader of the Milwaukee Bucks. There is no questions about it. He didn't even want to take that role in the beginning, but because of who he is, he's had to do that. They follow him. He also wills this team to wins when needed to be. They haven't lost back-to-back games or to the same team twice all year. That's pretty amazing. He's the reason why, or at least the main reason why. They're an excellent team together, but that would be the top reason why. So for me, going through all these things, better record, better overall numbers, better overall efficiency, it's Giannis. I don't really get how it's not Giannis. I think he's been so great all season that blurb or that blip from James Harden for 15, 20 games, whatever it was, while Chris Paul was out, everybody in the national media started writing James Harden's jock throughout that period. Right now, Paul George has had some electric games. The Thunder play really, really fast. So there are a lot of games where they're competitive, where he has to put up big numbers. But all in all, for me, it's the Greek Freak. No questions about it. All day, every day. All right, guys. thanks for watching. Again, if you're new to the station, you want more videos about our sporting teams here in Wisconsin, press that red button that says subscribe. My name is Ryan. Thanks for watching.